Okay, so picture this. You're just going about your day, maybe grabbing a coffee or something, and suddenly, bam, this like intense chest pain hits you, like a ton of bricks. Heart's racing, you can't catch your breath, and instantly you think heart attack.
Yeah, it's a common fear, and for good reason. I mean, heart health is something we all think about.
Big time. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. You send over your medical school notes all about the heart. And wow, some of these conditions like costochondritis, it's a mouthful. But then you've also got a biblical passage in there and a painting of a dinner party. What a mix.
Yeah, you're interested in the science of the heart, but also its deeper meaning, maybe even how it shows up symbolically in different cultures.
You got it. Okay, so how about we start with those medical notes? They get really in depth, talking about atherosclerosis, angina, even ischemia and infarction. Honestly, some of it went over my head. Where do we even begin?
Well, the key thing to remember is that your heart needs a constant supply of oxygen-rich blood, kind of like how your car engine needs fuel. All those terms we just mentioned, they mess with that flow in different ways.
Okay, I like that analogy. So with atherosclerosis, it's like the fuel lines are getting clogged up.
Exactly. Atherosclerosis is basically when plaque builds up inside your arteries. They narrow, which makes it tougher for blood to get through.
And that can lead to a heart attack.
It can. Now, your notes mentioned costochondritis, and that one can really throw you off because it can feel like a heart attack, but it's actually the cartilage in your chest getting inflamed.
Wait, so how can you tell the difference? That's kind of scary.
It's all in the details. Doctors will use tests, like an EKG, that measures the electrical activity in your heart. And blood tests, those can show if any heart muscle has been damaged. They're looking to figure out if it's what we call ischemia or infarction. Ischemia is like your heart's running low on fuel temporarily, the blood flow is down, but it's not totally blocked. Infarction, though, that's a full-on blockage, like during a heart attack when the heart tissue doesn't get oxygen and starts to die off. Big difference.
Okay, so ischemia is serious, but infarction is like the five-alarm fire.
You got it. With infarction, every second counts. Getting treatment fast, that makes
Got it.
all the difference in how much the heart muscle is damaged.
Got it. The lecture also mentioned cholesterol, LDL, HDL, triglycerides. It seems like a lot to keep track of. Can you give me the need to know simplified version?
Absolutely. Think of your arteries like highways, and cholesterol is like the traffic on those roads. LDL, that's your lousy cholesterol. It clogs things up, slows everything down. HDL, now that's the helpful cholesterol. It's like the crew that comes in to clear the traffic jam.
So when I get my cholesterol checked, I'm basically looking at the balance between the good and the bad. The LDL clogging things up versus the HDL cleaning house.
That's a great way to think about it.
So what can you do to keep those highways clear, keep your heart's engine running smoothly?
You probably already know this, but it comes down to a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
Eating a balanced diet, low in saturated fat, that's what contributes to those LDL traffic jams. Regular exercise to keep the blood pumping, and managing your stress levels because, believe it or not, stress can actually damage those arterial highways.
It sounds like knowledge really is power when it comes to your heart. Understanding all this can help you make better choices for your health. Speaking of choices, this deep dive took an interesting turn when you included this incredibly detailed painting by Alexandra Bida. It shows a scene from the Gospel of Mark. What's the story there? How does it connect to everything we've been talking about with the heart?
So this painting, it actually shows a moment that really challenged people back then. See, Jesus is having dinner with, well, people who were considered outcasts, tax collectors, and what the Gospels call sinners. And this act of sharing a meal together, something so basic, it actually gets at the heart of what you were just saying about making choices.
It's like he's choosing to see past those labels,
Yeah.
recognizing their humanity. But how does this connect to, the medical side of the heart, the stuff we were just talking about?
But remember how we talked about stress being hard on your heart?
Hmm.
Back then, being isolated, rejected by society, huge stressor. Imagine constantly feeling judged, excluded. That takes a toll, right?
Oh, absolutely. You're making me see this whole painting in a new light. It's not just about the food itself. It's about offering compassion, some human connection to people who are hurting.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to the notes you had about psychologists like Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. They studied what humans need to thrive, and their work, it kind of echoes what we're seeing in this painting.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. How so?
Well, Rogers, he talked about how important unconditional positive regard is. Basically, just accepting people for who they are, no judgment, Sound familiar?
That's exactly what Jesus is doing in the painting. He didn't care about their past or what their social status was. He offered them a place at the table.
Exactly. And Maslow, with his hierarchy of needs, he pointed out that belonging, having social connections, those are basic human needs, right up there with food and shelter.
So you're saying by sharing that meal, Jesus wasn't just being nice. He was addressing this deep need people have to connect, to belong, and that somehow that's connected to the well-being of the heart, even if we're not talking about the actual organ.
Exactly. And even today, modern medicine is realizing how much your emotional well-being affects your physical health, especially when it comes to the heart. We were talking before about those medical terms from your notes, like angina. Let's break
Hmm.
that down a little more. Imagine you feel this tightness in your chest, like someone squeezing your heart. That's angina. It's a symptom, not a disease itself. And it can be a warning sign of a bigger problem.
So angina, it's like the heart sending out an SOS signal.
In a way, yeah. It often happens when your heart isn't getting enough of that oxygen-rich blood. Remember those clogged arteries? Angina, it's like that traffic jam is causing some real discomfort.
The notes mention there are different types of angina, right?
Right. There's stable angina and unstable angina. Stable angina is usually triggered by something specific, exertion, stress, maybe you ate a big meal, and it typically goes away with rest or medication. It's like your heart saying, hey, I'm a little overworked here, need a break.
An unstable angina, that sounds more serious.
It is. Unstable angina. It's unpredictable. Can happen even when you're resting. That's a sign that the plaque in your arteries, it might be getting worse, increases the risk of a heart attack, like that traffic jam turning into a major pileup.
Okay, so stable angina is manageable, but unstable angina, that's a red flag that something worse is going on.
Exactly. And that brings us to the big one, a heart attack,
Uh-huh.
or what doctors call a myocardial infarction.
Okay, so with a heart attack, we're not talking about metaphorical pain anymore, right? This is the real deal.
Absolutely. A heart attack happens when the blood flow to part of the heart is totally cut off.
Uh,
And that part of the heart muscle, it starts to die.
and your notes mention different types of heart attacks. Something about a STEMI and a NSTEMI. Those sound intense.
They are serious, but let's not get bogged down in the medical jargon, okay?
Oh.
The main thing to remember is that both of those, they involve a blockage in a coronary artery. The severity of the blockage, where it's located, that's what's different. And doctors can see that on an EKG, but ultimately with either type, you need medical attention, like right away.
It's like no matter what type of heart attack, you don't mess around. Time is of the
You
essence.
got it. The sooner someone gets treatment, the better their chances are of not having as much damage to their heart muscle.
Speaking of treatment, the notes mention procedures like an angioplasty and bypass surgery. What exactly are those?
Angioplasty, or PCI, that's a minimally invasive procedure. Doctors use a catheter, basically a thin tube, to open up that blocked artery. Imagine a tiny balloon being inflated inside to push the plaque out of the way. Often they'll put in a stent. It's this little mesh tube to keep the artery open.
So it's like giving your arteries a little plumbing work.
Exactly. Bypass surgery, or CABG, that's more invasive, usually for when there are multiple blockages. During bypass surgery, surgeons actually take a healthy blood vessel from somewhere else in your body, and they use it to make a detour, like a bypass, around the blockage in the heart's artery.
Wow, that is some serious surgery.
It is.
Yeah.
But it shows you how far medical science has come. And the amazing thing is, even with procedures this advanced, those lifestyle changes we talked about, diet, exercise, managing stress, those are still key for preventing and managing heart disease.
It's like you said earlier, we need to take care of both our physical heart and our metaphorical heart, right? But how do we actually do that in our daily lives? How do we cultivate that compassion, that connection that we saw in the painting with Jesus? Can that even impact our actual heart health?
That's the million-dollar question, and one we'll get into as we keep going with this deep dive. Because just like our physical hearts need attention, so do our metaphorical hearts. Those are the seeds of empathy and connection.
You know, it's wild how this deep dive has brought together such different ideas, right? Clogged arteries and compassion, bypass surgery, and like belonging. It makes you think about the heart in a totally different way.
It really shows you how connected everything is.
Mm-hmm.
We've been focused on the physical heart, but that image of Jesus having dinner with those outcasts, that speaks to the heart as this symbol of empathy, of connection.
Yeah, totally. It's like he was saying, just come as you are, you're welcome at this table. And it got me thinking, can actually cultivating those qualities like compassion and empathy, can that actually have an impact on our physical hearts? Is there a link?
Well, more and more research is coming out that says, yeah, there probably is. You see, when we experience chronic stress, loneliness, anger, resentment, all those feelings we associate with a closed heart. It sets off all these responses in your body. Your cortisol spikes, blood pressure goes up, even inflammation in the arteries.
So it's like our bodies are literally hardwired to respond to emotional distress.
Exactly.
Right.
And over time, that stress, it takes its toll, can damage your cardiovascular system,
Right.
increases the risk of everything from high blood pressure to heart disease, even a stroke.
Wow, it makes that phrase broken heart seem a lot more literal, doesn't it? So if stress is like the heart's biggest enemy, what can we do to cultivate a more, I don't know, open heart
Oh.
to protect ourselves?
It starts by just noticing, paying attention to how you're feeling emotionally, recognizing when you're holding on to stress or negativity.
Yeah, easier said than done sometimes, right? But then what? How do we actually change those patterns?
It's about finding what works for you. The things that help you de-stress, reconnect with yourself, find a sense of peace and well-being. Maybe it's meditation, being out in nature, listening to music. Could be journaling or spending time with people you care about.
It's like we were saying before, taking care of that metaphorical heart, that inner world, it's just as important as exercising and eating right for our physical heart.
Absolutely. And the amazing thing is when you start taking care of that inner world, it ripples outward. You become more patient, more understanding, more compassionate
No.
to yourself and to others. And that creates this positive feedback loop. Less stress, better well-being for everyone.
So are you saying that kindness is actually good for your heart in
Mm,
every sense of the word?
exactly. And it's not just about being kind to others. It's about showing yourself that same kindness,
Hmm.
having compassion for yourself, forgiving your mistakes, and really owning your strengths.
It's like embracing that unconditional positive regard that Carl Rogers talked about, but not just for other people, for ourselves too.
Yes, it's about recognizing that we are all worthy of love and belonging, just as we are,
Hmm.
imperfections and all. And that radical self-acceptance, that's powerful. It can be really healing for ourselves and for everyone around us.
This deep dive has been amazing. I always knew taking care of my heart was important, but I've never thought about it like this. Connecting the physical and the emotional, the science and, well, the spiritual side of it.
It reminds us that we're not just a bunch of separate parts, we're whole beings. And when you come at health and well-being with that understanding, you tap into this vitality and resilience. It goes way beyond anything you'd expect.
I love that. It's like that saying, a healthy heart is a happy heart, right? But it's even more than that. It's a heart that's open, compassionate, connected to something bigger. It really makes you think, what if we all lived with that kind of open heart? What kind of world would we create? That's something I'm going to be thinking about long after this deep dive is over. Thanks for joining us for this incredible journey. Until next time, be well, be kind, and take good care of your heart in every sense of the word.